Welcome to the Success Ascent. My name is Pat Mancuso, the creator and host of our show. On the Success Ascent, we interview entrepreneurs, thought leaders, authors, CEOs to find out what has helped them on their journey of success. And today we have an amazing guest with you who's going to talk to us about a lot of that and probably more. His name is Jeremy Slate. Now I'm going to read his bio and then we're going to find out who the real Jeremy is. So Jeremy is the founder of Create Your Own Life podcast, which studies the highest performers in the world. He studied literature at Oxford University, specializes in using podcasting and new media to celebrate, create celebrity, and was ranked number 1 in iTunes and number 70 iTunes New and number 78 in iTunes Top 100. He was named the number 1 podcast to listen to by Inc. magazine in 2019. As well as being named the top influencer by Forbes. After his success in podcasting, Jeremy and Brielle founded Command Your Brand to help entrepreneurs get their message out by appearing as guests on their podcast. Jeremy, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Pat. I'm stoked to be here and hopefully add some value today, man.
Oh, man, I know you are going to because we're going to pull a bunch of information out of you. So, Jeremy, I always like to have some fun with my guests before we start. Yeah. And I say, that's Jeremy on paper. What about Jeremy might people not know or maybe would find surprising?
Well, there's a couple of ways we could go with that. Number one, I am the person that always wins Jeopardy in the privacy of my own home. And one day I will get on that show. I live on 4 acres where we have 24 chickens and a miniature pig. And I once pulled an 80,000-pound army tank to raise money for the Wounded Warrior Project.
Oh my gosh! You've done some pretty broad spectrum things. Now, what's funny, and I'll have to relate to one of our prior podcast guests. So I asked that same question of every one of our guests. He told me that there was something that most people didn't know about him, and he had a pet pig.
So
interesting. You got a miniature pig, so I'm thinking you guys might have something in common there. I don't know, but we'll circle back on that later on. I love it. I love it. So Jeremy, let's start off talking about. So you're an entrepreneur. You own a business. You've owned businesses, if you may. You've started ventures, and I always like to start off with our guests to say, "Okay, Jeremy, talk about that entrepreneurial journey. What have you learned?"
Well, I learned it's not what I thought it was. For me, I always thought being an entrepreneur, I remember being younger and my workout partner always wanted to be an entrepreneur. And to me, it was like, oh, why would you want to do that? Like, to me, you get a job, you work there for 40 years and then eventually you retire. I thought being an entrepreneur meant being lazy. So that was kind of my thought process on it. And in actuality, for me, I didn't realize that entrepreneurship was going to be a thing for me. My background is I'm a super student, so I have my undergrad degree in world religions, my master's in early Roman Empire propaganda. So I thought I was going to be a college professor. That's really what I thought I was going to do. And when I came out of school in 2011, it was a really bad economy, which is funny saying that now because I think that dollar is probably worth more than today's dollar. But anyway, I couldn't get a job because I had a master's degree. So I was overqualified for anything and then underqualified for anything. So nobody will really hire you.
Sure.
So I ended up actually during the day painting houses with an old school painter that required you to do everything by hand. So hand scraping, hand sanding. And I did that from 7 a.m. until 5 every day. I'd go home, take a shower, eat quick. And then I was the nighttime manager at the gym and from 6 to 11. So I wasn't doing a whole lot of sleeping. And I did that for about a year and a half until I ended up actually running into a priest friend of the family that said, hey, the private school I used to be the principal at is looking for teachers. You don't need any teaching background or whatever because it's private school. I ended up getting that job and I burnt out very, very quickly. Did that for 2 years. And when I was in school, people barely had flip phones. So I wasn't ready for the smartphone. So kids' whole days was trying to see how mad they could get me and getting it on video. And that was all day. So I just didn't last very long at that job. And then in 2012, my mom ended up having a really bad stroke and it made me look at a lot of what I was doing. And I realized I wanted to do something different. Yeah. So I quit that job on a whim. I saw a network marketing presentation. I thought I was going to be a millionaire in a week and a half, and it didn't really happen like that. But it was that first thing to get me to kind of take that leap and work through, that and having an in-home personal training business, selling life insurance, selling products on Amazon. And
Wow.
none of those things really took off and made me any money. So I ended up working at a friend's marketing firm. I had taught myself how to build websites from watching YouTube videos. And I did that and started podcasts as a hobby. We saw 10,000 listens in our first 30 days. And, really the rest is history. People said, hey, can you help me with this? And it led to us, starting the agency we have today, which is Command Your Brand.
And so, one of the questions I always ask, Jeremy, is I'll ask people, I'll say, where did that entrepreneurial bug start? And you just shared that, right? I mean, it really wasn't anything earlier in your life. It was through that journey, through that network marketing opportunity.
Yeah.
So let's go into that journey a little bit deeper. And so
Sure.
As a business owner, as an entrepreneur, like what ceilings have you hit? What challenges that have you had? And is there one or two that stand out?
I think the biggest ceiling, frankly, was myself. And I say that because you wouldn't know this now, but I've always seen myself as an introvert. I'm an only child, and I've always kind of enjoyed, doing things my own way and not having to collaborate with others and kind of just, having a quiet space. And frankly, if you're going to build a business, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you have to, be more extrovert. You have to be willing to connect with people. You have to be willing to do a lot of these things. So really the biggest ceiling I hit was my own self and who I was and how I was. And I had to get better at, doing that. And frankly, having the podcast actually helped me with that because I talked to lots of people. I had better conversations. I had to learn to ask better questions, be more interested in people, listen better. And believe it or not, I think that was the biggest secret to my success was being forced to, do interviews for personal development every single day.
You actually have to put yourself out there and learn it.
Mm-hmm.
So like, what was the defining moment for you to do that? Like, what forced you to get into that realm?
I think it was more that I had failed at all these different things and I thought there was still kind of something out there for me. And when I say failed, like I made money in all of them.
Right.
I just didn't enjoy it and I didn't see it being something I could do long term.
Okay.
And I think far too often people have this idea that you're going to follow your passion and you're never going to work a day in your life. And I'm sorry, like life is hard. You have to work. That's how it works. And I worked these things through to find out they really weren't for me. But when you look at it, I lost my thought process on the question now that I was explaining the question. Could you just ask that again?
Okay, it happens. You got so much that wants to come out as
well, there's background information to it, and then I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, and it's just we were talking about, like what prompted you to put yourself in front of that microphone and do that.
Oh, okay. So now I remember where I was going with this. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
But it's really more from the perspective of, okay, I had tried these different things and they didn't work, but I felt like I still needed to get out there. And I've been a podcast listener since 2007. I've been somebody that's loved podcasts.
Yeah.
And I'm just I guess what's the worst that could happen, right? Nobody listens. And I started a podcast in 2014. It was called Rock Your Life. It was absolutely horrible. I did it for about 60 days and quit because it just, that should not have continued. Thankfully, you cannot find the graphics out there anywhere online anymore. So that's a lucky thing for me. But that was kind of a learning experience to realize how not to do it.
Right.
And I still kind of had this inkling that I wanted to do something. And that was kind of why I pursued the podcast, to really just have an outlet, have a way to connect with people, have a way to learn. And I guess because I approached it more like a student, which, as I mentioned, was what I was really good at in my previous life.
Right.
So when I approached it as a student, it really created this incredible platform. And I think that was the difference. That first podcast I approached as the master, which I was not. And, didn't know how to use a microphone either. So it just wasn't very good. And when I approached it the second time around of what can I learn and who can I learn it from? That's when things really took off for me.
Well, it's really, there's two things there's two things that you mentioned. First, 2007 podcast started. I mean, it just seems like yesterday, right? To a lot of people. Yeah. 2007, that's crazy.
And I think they were going well before that because it was, back in the days when Dave Weiner and Adam Curry started, I think in 04 or 05 or somewhere around there. So it's been around a long time.
And frankly, podcasts haven't even necessarily scratched the surface yet, right? I mean, there's such a opportunity there. The other thing that you said, and I think you've said it a couple of times, is although you've tried all these things and, people might say you maybe failed at them, or you might I don't think you do. I think each one of those was a learning opportunity, and you took those learning opportunities and eventually put that into something, wrapped it in a ball, and now you're having amazing success. So, so congratulations on that.
Thank
so
you.
let me ask you another question around that journey. What has surprised you? Like, what has happened in that entrepreneurial journey as a business owner that you just weren't expecting?
I think the biggest thing is, number one, confronting things I don't like and finding out the more I confront them, the better that I get at them, the more I actually like them. Like, I hated sales. And, I've found that the more I worked on it, I'm the most nonchalant salesperson you will ever meet, where people are like, wait, you're selling something? And then I end up selling it. And I find that the more I focused on like just doing things that I didn't like, the more I liked them. And frankly, the better at them I became. I find there's a lot of false information out there about, and I really take issue with Gary Vee on this one. Don't do things you don't like to do. Well, I'm sorry, if you own a business, you have to sometimes, right? Like if you don't have any sales, you're not going to make any money. That's how it works. Right. So for me, it was confronting things I don't like to do, finding out what I liked about them, and getting more comfortable with doing them. Because to run a business, there's certain things you have to do you don't like to do.
Yeah, because when you start, it's just you, right? So you're everything. And yeah, there's things that you're going to have to do. And eventually you move yourself out of that and you hire and leverage around you. So
that's what my dad used to say. You're chef, cook, and bottle washer,
Exactly. So let me ask you one other question around that journey, and then we're going to transition to really where I think you're going to make the impact and what you're doing right now. So if you had to talk to your 20-year-old self, if you were sitting in front of a 20-year-old right now, what advice would you give them based upon what you know now about that journey?
It's hard, because I feel like what I would say is, number one, start sooner, and number two, just ride it out, man. Like you're going to get there eventually. But at the same time, I feel like one of the biggest things that a lot of people are missing when they start a business or when they start a podcast or whatever it may be is life experience.
Right.
So I think that life experience was vital. I've been out there in the working world. I've experienced, working 80 hours a week at one point and, working overtime and doing all these things. And I feel like that life experience is so important. I feel like that's one of the biggest problems in my generation, frankly, is everybody wants to proselytize about what they think, but they don't have any life experience, right? Like, and I think that's one of the biggest problems out there. So I don't know that I would tell my younger self anything. I would just say, ride it out, man. That'd be about it.
Yeah, us older folks, just a little bit older, we call that maturity. It's the maturity level. And
yes.
You know what? I hear what you're saying, right? Like we're in the process of writing a book right now, and it's that journey of that maturity and leadership. And I wouldn't be the person I am today without having to go through some of those battles and getting some of those scars. And that just comes from time, right? It just comes from time on task. So Jeremy, let's shift gears. And so you move through this process, you launch this podcasting deal, and now what you're doing today is you're helping other businesses do that, right? Marketing, branding, podcasting. Talk about what you're doing right now.
So I think that, and as somebody that has a live show, I think you totally get this. Like, this is the direction media is going. It's more on demand. It's more when users want it. And I think that's why there's a huge opportunity in the podcast world, because it's driven by, people that want the information they're getting and they're going out there to seek it. And at the same time, like, what we really do is we help people to be great guests on the right podcast to get more attention, to grow their brand, whatever it may be, because you're becoming the answer to people's questions. And I think that's what's really brilliant about the podcast world right now, is people are going out there to be educated. They're going out there to learn, and you are the solution for what they're looking for. So that's what we're really helping people to do.
Well, and and I just we're live, obviously, so I just picked up on a comment. Jeff House, who I know, hey Jeff, he said, "Wow, I needed this today. Confronting what you don't like to do."
Yes.
So absolutely, that's the impact that we get to have. So Jeremy, let's talk about you. You mentioned first of all, you've got a book coming out, which we'll talk about towards the end of the show.
Yeah.
And you talk about in the book, you're talking about how to ignite your passion and go from passive observer, I love that, to creator of your own life. Talk about that.
Well, I think too many people are victims of what life, they claim life does to them, right? Like they're just waiting for that next opportunity or that next thing or somebody to give them a raise or somebody to give them a job, when actually you need to look at your own responsibility level and everything you're doing, right? Okay, so I want to get a raise. Well, what do I need to do to better myself to get a raise? Okay, and they're not going to give me a raise. Great. Where can I go that they're going to give me that? I want more freedom. Okay, well, start a business. So I think to the way I look at it, too many times we're complaining about what's happening to us rather than taking that more causative viewpoint of what can we do about it. I think that's really vital, man.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I've heard this said, it's not what happens to us, it happens for us. And that's exactly what you're saying, right? Like, what can we do about it, or what do we take away from it? So let's talk a little bit about, we're in this economy, this world right now, and a lot of people think it's on fire. And I'm not one of those
It
people,
feels that way at sometimes,
yeah,
Pat.
Yeah. I think there's some underlying issues, and having been through two significant shifts in the world, 9/11 and the financial collapse of 07, 08. This is a different one because they're always different. And yet I do get the sense that we're going to start experiencing a change, if you may, in the economy. So we talked a little bit before we started the show. Talk about your thoughts around that and how marketing and branding and podcasting is going to be impacted by that.
Well, I think in January of this year, so the inflation numbers came out right now from January 1st to February 1st, and the numbers were it was like 7.8 or 7.9%.
Yep.
What I'm really interested to see, Pat, is I'm interested to see those, which are going to come out soon, those February 1st to March 1st numbers, because they're not going to be good. And here's what I think about that.
Yep.
I think too many people are going to say, okay, that person didn't buy from me. Oh, it's the economy. Or, so that person didn't take my job. It's the economy, whatever it is. And I think the thing you have to look at is security is in your own ability to do and produce, right?
Yep.
So when you're looking at it in a down economy, what should you do? What should you do? You should promote. You should promote and promote more. And I think that's the biggest thing you have to do. It's not the right time to scale back and pull back. It's the right time to put yourself out there more, because there's going to be people that are going to scale back, and you're going to grab that ground. Right. And that's what it's about. You need to promote more, get yourself out there more. And here's the other thing, because this is what we really focused on when the whole pandemic happened, is, there were people out of work that I couldn't hire before. So I hired them because, you know what I mean? They weren't available. They weren't looking for a job. Well, now they are. So I hired them. The other thing is, too, we looked at how can you make a process better? So we took every single process in our company, made it better, made accompanying video, made accompanying checklists, because we want to make sure, how can I do a better job? So if you're looking at the economy going down, remember, it's your own ability to produce and create that is your actual security. So if you're looking at it, how can you promote more and how can you do a better job? Like, those are the things you really need to be focusing on.
Right.
And, if you do that, and here's the thing, it's going to get harder and you're going to have to promote even more. So you need to get out there. You need to become the name in your space. And that's how you don't have to compete as much.
So I love that. And I agree with everything you're saying. So let me ask you this question then.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a lot of our listeners are entrepreneurs, we'll say small to medium-sized business owners. And this whole world of marketing feels, I hear it from a lot of people, it's like overwhelming. Like, they don't even know where to start sometimes because it's always changing. This algorithm changed today. YouTube says I can't do this anymore. And they're like, I don't even know where to start on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
How do you approach people? How do you, coach people? Just tell me what you would say to somebody who says those things.
Well, the first thing I would say, if they're worried about one thing that happens on YouTube or Twitter or whatever it may be, like, they're focused on tactics and not strategy. Tactics always change. Strategy stays the same. So when you look at it, like, if you're winning because there's some loophole on Facebook or whatever it may be, and that loophole closes,
right,
good luck. So you need to look at, what is my long-term strategy here? And I see it breaking down into this, right? Sales, marketing, public relations. It starts with public relations, goes into marketing, goes to sales. So if you're not selling, something's wrong in marketing. If your marketing's not converting, something's wrong in public relations. Public relations needs to be the first thing you do. And in this case, public is the audience you want to be in front of, and relations, how you relate to them or how they understand you. So you want to look at, how can I create more of that know, like, and trust factor? And the way everybody can do it is what I call the small pond strategy. Everybody is a big fish in a small pond somewhere. So you want to locate what that small pond is. For me, I grew up in a small town. It's 5/8 of a mile in size. Nothing happens there. So, so because of that, there is a small. Babe Ruth played golf there once in a while, man. So
Well,
don't laugh. But we don't even have a grocery store. Like, it's that bad.
Oh
So what happens is there's a small weekly newspaper that goes to everybody's house on a Thursday. Now, here's what people don't realize: those weeklies are all in Google News. So not only do you get a print version, you also get a backlink. So you want to find all of these small news sources that you are a big fish in, because you know what? If I write a press release, they're going to print it because nothing happens here. So that's how you kind of build your base level of press and PR and create trust, so that, you know, you have pieces to market, and any marketing you do is more successful. So you create more sales. But if you're not selling, you take a look at your marketing. If you're not, marketing isn't doing well, you take a look at your public relations and you back it up to the basic.
So let's say I'm a small business owner, right? And let's say I own a local dry cleaning shop.
Yeah.
Tell me where I start with public relations.
So I would take a look at, is there, you know, number one, you got to figure out what's newsworthy about what you're doing, right? So what that means is, what's interesting about it? Why should people care? Like, the thing I usually ask myself is, why do people give a what about what I have to talk about? And if you can answer that question, you're in good shape. So when you look at that, you would say, okay, so you know what? We are the first organic dry cleaners in this town. So number one, you can charge more because you're organic. Number two, it's something interesting about what you're doing. So now you can write a press release about that. You can write a press release about, the first organic dry cleaner in this town, and they'll probably print it. And now you got your first press release out there. Now, people think the press release itself is the media piece. No, the press release is the goal of getting more media.
Sure.
But it can be a media piece in itself. But that's where I would start, is figuring out what's newsworthy about what I'm doing. Yeah. You could be a veteran. You could be, doing something in your community that's for anti-drug education or something like that. Whatever it is that's newsworthy about what your business is doing, those are the things you'd be promoting. Promoting locally is easy because most people aren't doing it or aren't doing it well. Yeah. And I think there's a ton of opportunity out there that a lot of people miss because they want to go bigger before they start small.
Well, and you just, and I just use that example, not for any reason other than you just think about the local dry cleaner runs ads about a discount on their cleaning, and that approach you're talking about is just a totally different approach.
Well, discount cleaning means you're cheap. You know what I mean? Like you're not promoting your core values or what you're actually doing. Yeah. And when you're competing on price, it's a race to the bottom, man. You got to compete on like what you're doing, how you're doing it, what's unique about you, and why people should come to you.
So give me in a nutshell, what's Command Your Brand? Like we're going to talk about your book and such, but how are you helping businesses right now specifically?
So we help people figure out exactly, what story to tell, how to talk about it, and then the right podcast to talk about it on, because I think it is a vital education source. And if you can become the answer to people's questions, that's how your business grows, man. Because as I mentioned, sales, marketing, public relations, and being on a podcast really can accomplish two of those. So it really is a PR action. It can also accomplish some marketing actions. But if you're creating that know, like, and trust factor, then people want to work with you. And I think that's a really big deal.
I love it. Okay, Jeremy, so let's shift gears a little bit. I ask all of my guests, I say, tell me the best advice that you've ever been given, and when you followed it, what did you learn?
When I was 12 years old, I was a terrible outfielder. My dad played minor league baseball. So his advice to me was, catch 100 pop-ups and then tell me you're a terrible outfielder. And I'll tell you what, I was the best center fielder on every team I played on after doing that. And the thing that I've learned from that is the number of times you do something, the better at it you get. Yeah. And that's what it's really all about, is as hard as you're willing to work, as hard as you're willing to practice, that's where you achieve things.
Yeah. Time on task is really important. And you go back to, how you compared, and I haven't done this yet, and I may do it at some point, is go back and look at the first podcast and recording we did. We're almost 2 years into it now. And I think I'd probably say the same thing. Oh my gosh, that was terrible. And it's time on task. So I love that. So
it's the biggest thing a lot of people don't think of, because I at one time was benching 455. I only bench 300 now. So it's like I'm not where I was. But you know what? People always say, oh, how do you bench 455 pounds? You know how? Linear progression, 5 pounds every week for 10 years. And that's what it comes down to, man. There's no shortcut. It's hard work consistently.
And it's funny because you go back to what you said earlier about when you did the multi-level marketing, you thought you were going to make a ton of money and, all right away. And the fact is that that's the blind spot, right? That a lot of entrepreneurs have.
Yeah.
They just don't understand there's going to be a price to pay for it. And it takes time.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. There's a learning curve in anything you do. That's why Malcolm Gladwell talks about the 10,000 hour rule. Frankly, right. I think for a lot of people, it could be more than 10,000 hours, but you got to be willing to kind of risk it for the biscuit, man.
Well, and you got to be doing the right things for much of that time. If you're doing the wrong thing for 10,000 hours, you have a problem.
I spent 7,000 hours doing it wrong, man, but the last 3,000, let me tell you.
Exactly. So let's flip that upside down. What's the worst advice that you've ever been given that hopefully you didn't follow? However, if you did, what did you learn?
I don't know if it was directly given to me, but I think it's something that's often repeated in every book and every social media post and whatever, and that's follow your passion and you'll never work a day in your life. That's bunk, man. It's about finding something you're good at, working hard, and you'll become passionate when it becomes effortless. So to me, I think following your passion is frankly the worst advice you can be given.
It's interesting, and I've heard both sides of that, and I think that's the good side to all the information out there, and then the potential risk is that you just don't know what is like, you got to choose what you want to follow, right? Like follow your passion, and then I do, and I don't make any money. Well, you got to make money, and then, it's just funny. It's just really funny. The internet is great in a lot of aspects, and there are some things that are interesting as part of it as well.
But internet marketing often lies to you.
Most people, I'll tell you what's funny about that. And most people don't know that most of the people on the internet that are running ads sitting next to a jet or this amazing house, they just don't understand. They can rent those things for, a few $1,000s an hour. And then they're like shocked when you tell them that, like, no, that's not their car. They just rented it for the shoot. So yeah, it's interesting. So Jeremy, I'm going to do a little housekeeping here, and then I want you to come up with a final thought. You're going to talk about, you've got a great giveaway opportunity for us. So, ladies and gentlemen, we cannot continue to do this without your support. We love when you give us feedback. You can go to thesuccessascent.com. I'm going to scroll that here, www.thesuccessascent.com, or you can go to your favorite podcast source and leave us ratings, follow us, do all the things, whatever those sources are. They all change. So my daughter keeps telling me, don't say subscribe, because they don't subscribe anymore, and yet people subscribe at places. So I don't understand it. It's just all changing. However, wherever you listen, go there, follow us. We love it. We love your support. We always love your feedback as well. So Jeremy, I asked you to give us a final thought, and then you're going to share an opportunity for our listeners, which I am very grateful that you're going to do this.
Well, here's the thing I would say, life is a lot of hard work, and that's fine, but you have to be willing to confront that, find out what you like about it. And, when you do that, you can have a lot of success. And that's, one of the biggest things I've learned, you mentioned my book, Unremarkable to Extraordinary, coming out June 21st. That's one of the biggest principles I have in there is I've interviewed nearly 1,000 people. And a lot of them, it's been about hard work. It's about integrity. And it's about, at the end of the day, being able to look yourself in the mirror and say, I gave everything. And when you can do that, that's where success really comes in. And I think oftentimes there's so much false information about where success comes from. And frankly, It's about deciding you want something, working hard to get it, and going out there and getting it, man.
Absolutely. So when they go to getextraordinarybook.com, what are they going to get?
Yeah, so if they go and pre-order the book through that site and bring us back either the receipt or the order number, we'll actually give them a free version of the audiobook as well as a guide called 30 Days to Extraordinary, just for grabbing it over there.
I love it. I love it. Well, Jeremy, thank you so much. Thanks for the gift to our listeners, and thank you for your time. I know it's valuable. And we just really appreciate everything you've shared today. You've knocked it out of the park. So thank you so much.
Hey, Pat, thanks so much for having me, man. I know I can I think it's for virtue of being a podcaster. Sometimes I don't shut up. So thanks for having me, man.
Listen, I'm not here to talk. That's the whole idea. So I love it. So, ladies and gentlemen, as I end every show, be happy, be healthy, be safe. Until the next time we talk. Take care.